Hey, g'day everyone, Skarvig here with a quick update for Atlas. It's actually 3 updates rolled into one, as I've been behind a little bit, but they are all quite small and some quite interesting. The first of which that was released was Defensive Towers for the Sea Forts, which appears to be on PvP. When you own the Sea Fort, you can build yourself a tower. Those towers come in 3 forms: the Atlantean Spire, the Industrial Generator, and the Army of the Damned Pylon. Of which the Atlantean Spire basically provides a 15% speed buff for your ships. The Industrial Generator provides a damage resistance of 15%, and the Army of the Damned provides a damage boost of 15%. And given that it's actually only meant to be for your server, that would assume that on the officials, that would mean that your grid is where you get that benefit. You can build them from the advanced automation built in the smithy and uses coal as the resource. There were a number of fixes that were actually put in. People can basically check them out for themselves. The main thing is that it looks like there's a bunch of collision and mesh issues that they were actually sorting out. Probably one of the other interesting ones was that the fact that the claim tower decay is actually now enabled in PvE. I was a little bit surprised that that wasn't actually in there in the first place. But again, yeah, more clipping and platform saddles and all that kind of stuff. So just a little bit of issues. Yeah. But that is the first one of the 3. The second of which was a SGE, so Server Grid Editor update and a minor hotfix. As far as that goes, I mean, this is really for those people that are interested in using the Server Grid Editor for making their own Atlas grids, so basically your private servers and all the rest of that. They added basically a feature to be able to choose which map type you were actually exporting, whether it was a JPEG or a PNG, I believe is the main thing there. I've heard that there's still some issues around the SGE, but I'm sure that they'll continue to try and push stuff out. They're definitely working towards this kind of thing, but the SGE is critical for those people who want to be able to make their own maps. The last update, which isn't actually an update to the game, but rather an update to the people. They've created themselves, or if they had this before, they've basically issued a dev blog, which I thought was actually quite good. I feel it might be a little bit short. They could have probably put a bit more stuff in there. So I assume this is just stuff that they're working on presently. So this is pretty much the priority stuff that they're working on. Regarding the trade winds patch, what are the goals and expectations for the strategic impact of the trade winds and the new map layout? The trade winds in the last update go hand in hand with the recent map to create a more interesting strategic choice for players and companies. The idea was that newer players basically congregate towards the free ports, and the regions just outside of the free ports tend to be the easier ones, where if you want the more difficult stuff, you actually need to head north towards the northern edge of the map, where high level players will find a more challenge and more valuable resources. And then the trade winds themselves actually provide a faster way of actually traversing the map. Having played on the PvE, I haven't really noticed this, other than the fact that because there's no free port in the northern section and they've disabled being able to just spawn on your grid if you die, so unless you have a bed down, you end up having to go back to the start and just basically sail all the way back, which can cause a little bit of a hassle. So I forgot to build a bed once and I ended up having to sail all the way across the map again, which was not what I wanted to do. But I guess I haven't explored enough to notice the difficulty difference in the northern islands. It's certainly not a difficulty from a creature point of view. Obviously you've got different resources, but I'm not seeing where the difficulty is actually being driven from. And maybe that's something to come, I'm not entirely certain. Alright, what is the plan for PvP combat and balancing? And is there a philosophy that dictates what gets buffed, nerfed and removed? They didn't really talk too much about what gets buffed, nerfed and removed, but what they're planning on doing with the combat is to, I'm going to sort of paraphrase what they've got here. They're interested in providing both sea and land combat, whereas before they sort of promoted just sea combat. Now it looks like they're focusing on both. They want the ships to be able to be utilised to both break a blockade as well as to provide a blockade. You are going to have different types of ships that will have counters to other types of ships and weaponry. It sounds like they want to have land to actually have that as well, where there's different types of land mechanics where the defender can counter something that's actually being counter the attacker. And so you can't just rely on single types of buildings and ships and weapons. because if somebody comes in and brings the counter to that, then you're just basically going to become defeated. And so they want to have a lot of this countering tactics involved. And it sounds very interesting. I'd be fascinated to see where it ends up. Obviously, there's not a lot of hard counters really put into the game at this point in time from the rhetoric that they're actually putting out there in terms of the different styles of ships that they're thinking about. What are we going to see in upcoming patches? Are we done with map micro enhancements in favour of micro adjustments and additions? What can we see for new content can we look forward to? And they're basically saying here the map looks like it might get some kind of a geographical theming. I'm hoping that will be the Atlantean industrial ship of the dam type theming, but they don't go a huge amount there. But then they talk about piracy between arid desert tiles and tropical islands and crystal blue waters. And so I'll be interested to see what they're talking about with the piracy between maps, whether that's going to be NPC driven or whether that's going to be some kind of a thing that they're going to want players to do and introduce some kind of a risk-reward type thing that people will want to go in and do that kind of stuff. They then talk about the capture and control of strategic points, and they've mentioned this before, where they want a location and it's going to cost you time and effort and resources to build these huge monumental level things that provide you with a large scale buff for your companies. And that sounds all very nice and all, but who knows when we will get the info on that, because I'm hoping it's not these defensive towers on the sea forts, because they're not expensive and they're not monumental. And yeah, we'll see where it goes. In upcoming patches they talk about the new ships, because obviously we've got the modular system, and they're talking about how the midsection, the front and rear castles also need to have the modular stuff added to them. And then they mentioned that there's also 2 new ships to be put into the mix, where there's a mortar ship and a turtle ship. Now, with this particular one, I find like, other than obviously having a mortar and a turtle ship themed modules to put onto a ship, I don't know why they're bothering with these named varieties, because really, if you're going to go down that modular route, they've already proven the modular route with the Kraken ship and the Ram. Wouldn't you actually just remove the names of the ships now and provide different skeletons with the modules, and it's up to the person to decide how they want to actually build it? And so really all you're doing is providing different look and feel ships, which have a variety of costs to build, and then obviously a number of module points that you can actually put onto it. And then if somebody wants to make a ship that looks like a turtle, it's up to them. And I thought that was the direction they're going. And so I can only assume this is a short-term measure where they obviously have to provide a couple of ideas for people to work with, and it needs to fulfill their idea that there's these tactics and counters that they want to be able to put into the game. But if the end goal is to provide people with a ship frame that they can build from the ground up with module points, having these named ships doesn't make a lot of sense, unless there are fixed elements to the ships that you can't remove, which kind of takes away from the point of having a modular ship in the first place. So I don't know where that one's going. It could just be that this is the early phases of removing the names of the ships, not the name ships, but just not bothering to name the ships, and people can do what they want. But we'll have to wait and see on that one. And if people can have true freedom of customizations of vessels, how are you going to end up with the tactics and hard counters when people can build what they want and potentially overcome? So yeah, we'll have to wait and see how that one goes out too. So I'm very happy with the fact that they put the blog out. As far as my final thoughts go, so we've got this blog. I'd like to see them go further, because there's been lots of questions in the Q&As over the last couple of months, and there's been a lot of stuff in the patches going out the last couple of months, and I feel that they've only answered just a very small fraction of the future of the game, especially with the fact that the markets are really quite poor at the moment, and I'm seeing a lot of bugs with them. But that seems to be put on the back burner, but it doesn't even seem to be on the horizon as such, according to the blog. And so it will be interesting to see if they're able to put down a more succinct roadmap and actually show what the time frame they're expecting a lot of these things. I know they probably don't want to put time frames down, because it's wildcard grape shot. They tend to struggle with meeting deadlines sometimes, but I guess most companies do at times as well. But yeah, it seems to be a theme with them that things get delayed, and in their case, they've actually admitted that they put things on the back burner. And so, wait and see. I like the blog, but I'd like them to fulfill it with a bit more of a roadmap idea where they can actually show all of the things that they're actually thinking about, rather than just a handful. Anyway, hopefully you found my discussion interesting and all that sort of stuff. I probably rambled on for a fair bit longer than I anticipated at the end there. And yeah, I'll catch you in the next one when something else gets released in Atlas.